Preston Walters stared at the sleek white envelope like it might detonate. The Horizon Foundation Gala, black tie, full media coverage, +1 required. At 39, he was one of the youngest tech billionaires in the country, yet for 5 consecutive years, he'd faced those pitying stares alone. His wife Mia had been gone 4 years now, taken by a sudden stroke when their daughter Harper was only 2. He'd sworn never to bring someone home, never let Harper form attachments that might shatter. But his chief of staff had finally convinced him. Hire a professional companion. Just for one evening. Someone forgettable. When the elevator chimed, Harper was building magnetic towers on the living room rug. "Daddy, who's here?" The woman standing in his foyer wore a black apron over her navy dress. She'd come straight from her restaurant shift, dark curls tied loosely, brown eyes apologetic. "I'm Isabel Stanley," she said softly. She was nothing he'd expected. "Welcome to Life in Stories. If you love emotional, gripping tales, make sure you subscribe so you never miss a new episode. Settle in, relax, and tell me where you're watching from. I love seeing our community grow across the world." Now, let's dive into today's story. Preston Walters had built empires from lines of code. He'd navigated hostile boardrooms, billion-dollar acquisitions, and technological revolutions that reshaped industries. Yet standing in his penthouse at 39, staring at a cream-colored invitation, he felt utterly defeated. The Horizon Foundation Gala. Black tie. +1 required. He'd attended alone for 4 consecutive years since Mia's death. 4 years of well-meaning whispers, sympathetic glances, questions disguised as concern. "Preston, you look well. Are you seeing anyone?" Translation: when will you stop being broken? He wasn't broken. Just careful. Harper, his 6-year-old daughter with Mia's gentle smile and devastating intuition, had been only 2 when the stroke took her mother. Silent. Sudden. Irreversible. Preston had promised himself he'd never introduce temporary people into her world, never let her attach to someone who might disappear. But tomorrow's gala wasn't optional. His company was the primary sponsor. Showing up alone again would spark another round of pity he couldn't stomach. "Mr. Walters." Nora appeared in the doorway, tablet in hand. His chief of staff had worked with him for 8 years and knew when he was spiraling. "Have you considered the service I mentioned?" Preston set down the invitation. "You mean hiring someone to pretend we're together?" "I mean hiring professional support so you can focus on the foundation's work instead of deflecting personal questions all evening." Nora's tone was matter-of-fact. "It's discreet. Respectful. Think of it as delegating a social obligation." Preston exhaled slowly. When she framed it that way, it sounded almost reasonable. "What would I even request?" "Someone kind," Nora said immediately. "Someone calm. Patient. Good with people but not performative." Preston nodded slowly. "And someone who wouldn't make Harper uncomfortable if she happened to meet them." Nora's expression softened. Of course. He made the call that afternoon. The service was professional, almost clinical. They assured him they'd send someone polished and appropriate, who could arrive by early evening. He imagined rehearsed elegance. Someone forgettable who'd smile on cue and disappear after midnight. Someone safe. Harper padded into the living room that evening wearing purple star pajamas, her dark curls still damp from her bath. She settled cross-legged on the rug, carefully stacking magnetic tiles into a precarious tower. "Daddy." She didn't look up. "Are you taking someone to your fancy party?" Preston froze mid-step. "I'm figuring that out, sweetheart. Mom always went with you." Harper's voice was thoughtful, not sad. She mentioned Mia the way other children mentioned distant relatives, with gentle curiosity rather than grief. Maybe someone nice could go this time. Someone who likes pancakes and bedtime stories. His chest tightened. Harper had been so young when Mia died that her memories were mostly photographs and his carefully curated stories. She didn't mourn a person she'd known. She mourned the idea of what she'd lost. "I'll try my best," Preston said quietly. Harper finally looked up, chewing her sleeve, her tell for nervous hope. "Okay, Daddy." When the elevator chimed an hour later, Harper's tower had grown impressively tall. "She's here," Nora called from the foyer. "Who's here?" Harper scrambled to her feet. Preston's pulse quickened as he approached the door. He'd prepared himself for polished professionalism, someone who'd glide through the evening with practiced charm. Instead, he found Isabel Stanley. She wore a simple navy dress with a black apron still tied at her waist, as though she'd walked directly from a restaurant shift. Her dark curls were gathered loosely, a few strands escaping around her face. No dramatic makeup, no rehearsed posture, just warm brown eyes and an apologetic smile. "Mr. Walters." She extended her hand. "I'm Isabel Stanley. The service said you needed someone last minute. I told them I couldn't change out of my work clothes, but they insisted you wanted someone who could come immediately. I hope that's all right." Preston realized he'd been staring. "It's perfectly fine. Thank you for coming on such short notice." "Hi." Harper peeked around his leg, eyes wide with curiosity. Isabel's entire demeanor shifted. She crouched down instantly, not patronizing, but genuinely interested. "Hi there. What are you building?" "A tower," Harper said proudly. "But it keeps falling." "Then you're a real engineer," Isabel said seriously. "Engineers fail 100 times before they make something amazing." Harper's face lit up. "That's what Daddy says." Isabel glanced up at Preston, and something passed between them. Not romantic, but recognition. She wasn't intimidated by his penthouse or his reputation. She was simply present. Preston hadn't felt that in years. While they waited for the car, Harper insisted on giving Isabel a tour. She dragged her by the hand to her bedroom, pointing out drawings pinned to the wall, rainbows, rockets, stick-figure families. "This was Mommy," Harper explained, indicating the tallest figure. "She's in heaven now." Preston tensed in the doorway, ready to intervene. But Isabel just nodded gently. She must have been very special. She was. Harper moved her finger to another drawing. "This is me. And this is Daddy." She paused at a blank space beside the figure representing Preston. "Daddy says we don't have to fill it yet." Isabel studied the drawing with quiet respect. "That's very wise." Later, in the car gliding toward the gala, Preston felt compelled to apologize. "I'm sorry if this situation is awkward. You don't have to talk much. Just being there is enough." Isabel turned to him, her expression thoughtful. "It's not awkward. I've worked in restaurants for years. You meet every kind of person. Most just need someone who actually listens." Preston studied her profile as city lights streaked past. She wasn't performing. She wasn't trying to impress him. She was comfortable in her own authenticity. Something about that steadied the chaos in his chest. Just before they arrived, Harper's voice crackled through Preston's phone. Nora had let her call from the apartment. "Daddy." Harper's whisper was thick with sleepiness. "She feels nice." Preston's breath caught. "What, sweetheart?" "Isabel. She feels nice. Like safe." The line went quiet as Nora gently reclaimed the phone. Preston sat back in the leather seat, aware of Isabel's curious glance. He felt something shift inside him. Not romantic longing, but a crack in the careful walls he'd built. A possibility he wasn't ready to name. Just a door, opening. Just a little. The car glided through downtown traffic, city lights painting streaks of gold across the tinted windows. Preston adjusted his cufflinks for the third time, a nervous habit he thought he'd conquered years ago. "I should apologize," he said finally. "This entire arrangement is unconventional. You shouldn't feel obligated to do anything beyond just being present." Isabel turned from the window, her expression thoughtful rather than offended. "Mr. Walters." "Preston," he corrected quietly. "Preston," she amended with a small smile. "I've worked in restaurants since I was 16. My family owned a small diner in Brooklyn before we lost it during the recession. I've served politicians, celebrities, people having the worst days of their lives, people celebrating the best. You learn to read rooms, to understand what people need even when they can't say it." She paused. You need tonight to be manageable. That's not awkward. That's just honest. Something in Preston's chest loosened. She wasn't patronizing him or performing empathy. She was simply stating facts with the same calm she'd used with Harper earlier. "Thank you," he said, and meant it. Isabel nodded, then returned her gaze to the glittering skyline. "Besides, I've never been to anything like this. It's kind of exciting." Despite himself, Preston smiled. The Horizon Foundation Gala was held at the Steinway Building, a landmark venue with soaring ceilings, crystal chandeliers, and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. As Preston's car pulled up to the red carpet entrance, camera flashes erupted like lightning strikes. He'd done this dozens of times. He knew the choreography: exit the car, pause for photos, deflect personal questions, smile until his face ached. But this time, Isabel's hand rested lightly in the crook of his arm as they stepped into the blinding light. "Mr. Walters. Over here." "Preston, who's your guest tonight?" He felt Isabel stiffen slightly, but when he glanced at her, she was smiling. Not a brittle, forced expression, but something genuine and calm. "Just breathe," she murmured. "Pretend they're customers waiting for their check. Smile, nod, keep moving." Preston nearly laughed. Somehow, that absurd comparison actually helped. They made it through the gauntlet and into the grand ballroom, where hundreds of guests mingled beneath chandeliers that looked like frozen starlight. Almost immediately, colleagues and board members approached. "Preston, good to see you." Louis Morrow, one of his senior investors, extended his hand before turning to Isabel with open curiosity. "And you are?" "Isabel Stanley," she said warmly, shaking his hand without hesitation. "I'm a friend of Preston's. Not girlfriend. Not date. Just friend." The simplicity of it disarmed Louis completely. "Well, it's wonderful to meet you, Isabel. How do you two know each other?" "Through mutual friends," Isabel replied smoothly. Preston mentioned the Foundation's work with educational technology. "It sounds incredible." And just like that, the conversation shifted to safe territory. Preston watched somewhat stunned as Isabel navigated the exchange with effortless grace, not because she was performing, but because she genuinely seemed interested. Dinner was served at round tables draped in ivory cloth, each centerpiece an arrangement of white orchids and candlelight. Preston found himself seated between Isabel and Catherine Merrick, a sharp-eyed executive from a partnering firm. "So, Isabel," Catherine began, swirling her wine. "What do you do?" Preston tensed, suddenly aware of the vast gulf between his world and Isabel's. But Isabel didn't flinch. "I'm a waitress," she said simply. "I work at a bistro in Midtown. My family used to own a restaurant in Brooklyn. My grandmother started it in the 70s. We lost it about 10 years ago, but I grew up in that kitchen. Best education I ever got." Catherine's eyebrows lifted, but not unkindly. "That must have been difficult." "It was," Isabel admitted. "But it taught me resilience. And how to make a perfect omelet under pressure." She smiled. "Those skills translate surprisingly well to life." Laughter rippled around the table. Even Catherine softened, leaning in with genuine curiosity. "Tell me more about your grandmother's restaurant." For the next 20 minutes, Isabel shared stories about her grandmother's legendary temper, the regular customers who became family, the chaotic Sunday brunches where 3 generations worked side by side. She spoke with warmth and humor, never self-pitying, never apologetic. Preston found himself forgetting to eat, simply listening. She wasn't trying to impress anyone. She was just herself. And people responded to that authenticity like flowers turning toward sunlight. Halfway through the evening, Preston excused himself and stepped onto a balcony overlooking the city. The cool night air was a relief after the warmth of the ballroom. He'd been out there less than a minute when the door opened behind him. "Too much?" Isabel asked, joining him at the railing. "Just needed a moment," Preston admitted. "I'm not used to." He trailed off, unsure how to finish. "Not being alone," Isabel offered gently. He glanced at her, startled by her perceptiveness. "It's okay," she continued. "Loneliness becomes familiar after a while. Sometimes company feels more exhausting than comforting. Preston exhaled slowly. Yes. Exactly that. They stood in companionable silence, the city humming below them. "Can I ask you something?" Isabel said finally. "Of course. When was the last time you did something just because you wanted to? Not because it was expected or necessary or good for Harper. Just because it made you happy." Preston opened his mouth to answer, then closed it. He genuinely couldn't remember. Isabel nodded as though he'd spoken aloud. "That's what I thought." Before Preston could respond, his phone buzzed insistently. Nora's name flashed across the screen. He answered immediately. "What's wrong?" "Preston, I'm sorry to interrupt." Nora's voice was tight with concern. Harper woke up. She's very upset. She had a nightmare about you not coming home. I've tried everything but she won't calm down. She's asking for you." Preston's heart dropped into his stomach. "I'm leaving now." "I'm so sorry. It's not your fault." He was already moving toward the door, Isabel following without question. "I'll be there in 15 minutes. In the car, Preston gave the driver clipped instructions while firing off texts to his event coordinator. Isabel sat quietly beside him, her earlier ease replaced with focused concern. "You don't need to come," Preston said suddenly. "I can have the driver take you home after he drops me off." Isabel shook her head. She'll feel better seeing a familiar face, even if it's only familiar from a few hours ago. Preston stared at her. "You don't have to." "I know," Isabel interrupted gently. "But I want to." Something shifted in Preston's chest. Not gratitude exactly, but recognition. This woman, hired for a single evening, was choosing to stay when she had every reason to leave. She was choosing Harper. Choosing him. Without being asked. Without expectation of anything in return. The car accelerated through the glittering night, carrying them toward a little girl who needed her father. And somehow, unexpectedly, toward something neither of them had planned. The penthouse was dark except for the soft glow spilling from Harper's bedroom. Preston took the stairs 2 at a time, Isabel close behind. Nora met them in the hallway, her usually composed face etched with worry. "She won't settle," Nora whispered. "I've tried everything." Preston nodded his thanks and pushed open Harper's door. His daughter sat upright in bed, clutching her stuffed elephant, tears streaming down her flushed cheeks. Her breath came in hitching gasps, the kind that follows extended crying. "Harper, sweetheart." Preston crossed the room in 3 strides, gathering her into his arms. "I'm here. Daddy's here." "You left," Harper sobbed into his shoulder. "You left like Mommy left, and you didn't come back, and I called and called but you were gone." "I'm right here," Preston murmured, rocking her gently. "I'll always come back. Always." But Harper's small body continued to shake, the nightmare still clinging to her like shadows. Preston felt helpless, his heart splintering with each of her ragged breaths. He'd comforted her through nightmares before, but tonight something felt different. Deeper, more primal. A soft sound made him turn. Isabel stood in the doorway, backlit by the hall light. She caught his eye, a silent question, "May I?" Preston nodded, desperate for anything that might help. Isabel approached slowly, kneeling beside the bed so she was eye level with Harper. "Hey, sweetheart," she said gently. "Can I tell you something my grandmother used to tell me when I got scared?" Harper lifted her tear-stained face from Preston's shoulder, hiccuping. "Okay." "When someone loves you," Isabel said softly, "they don't forget you, even when they're far away or busy doing important things. Love is sticky. Like really good glue. It stays stuck to your heart no matter what." Harper blinked, processing this. Like the glue for my art projects." "Exactly like that," Isabel smiled. "Your daddy's love is stuck to you. So even when he has to go to grown-up parties or business meetings, his love stays right here." She tapped gently over Harper's heart. "It never leaves." Harper's breathing began to slow. She wiped her nose with the back of her hand. "It stays. It stays," Isabel confirmed. Always. Harper looked between Isabel and Preston, her 6-year-old mind working through this new understanding. Then, in the devastating innocence only children possess, she whispered, "Daddy, can she be my new mom?" Time stopped. Preston's breath caught in his throat. Isabel went completely still. The question hung in the air like a physical thing, impossible to ignore, impossible to answer. Harper looked at them with guileless hope, unaware she'd just detonated something profound in both adults. Preston found his voice first, though it came out rough. "Harper." But Isabel was already moving, her expression tender but firm. She took Harper's small hands in hers. "Sweetheart, I can't be your mom. No one can replace her. She was special and important, and she'll always be your mom." Harper's face began to crumple. "But," Isabel continued quickly, "I can be someone who cares about you. Someone who thinks you're wonderful and brave and smart. That's a pretty special thing too, isn't it?" Harper considered this seriously, then nodded slowly. "Okay." "Okay," Isabel echoed, squeezing her hands gently before releasing them. Within minutes, Harper's exhaustion won. She curled into Preston's chest, her breathing evening into sleep. He held her long after she drifted off, afraid that moving might shatter something fragile. Isabel waited quietly in the corner, giving them space. 20 minutes later, after Preston had carefully tucked Harper under her constellation comforter and triple-checked she was deeply asleep, he found Isabel standing in his living room, looking out at the glittering city below. "I'm sorry," he said immediately. "She shouldn't have." "Don't apologize." Isabel turned to face him. "She's processing big feelings. That's healthy." Preston ran a hand through his hair, suddenly exhausted. "Can I make you tea? Coffee? It's the least I can do after you stayed. Tea would be nice." They moved to the kitchen, where Preston filled the kettle with the automatic movements of routine. The silence between them wasn't uncomfortable, but it was heavy with unspoken things. "I'm terrified," Preston said suddenly, surprising himself. "Every single day, I'm terrified I'm failing her. That I'm not enough. That she needs things I can't give her." Isabel accepted the mug he offered, wrapping her hands around its warmth. "You showed up tonight. You left an important event the second she needed you. That's not failing." "But what she asked," Preston's voice cracked slightly. "She needs more than I can provide alone. I know that. But I'm scared of bringing someone into her life who might leave. I can't let her lose someone again." "So you've been losing people preventatively," Isabel said gently, "keeping everyone at a distance so she won't get hurt." Preston stared into his tea. "Yes. And in the process, you've been lonely. She's been lonely." "Yes," he whispered. Isabel was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice carried a different quality. Vulnerability wrapped in strength. "I grew up in a single-parent household. My mom worked 3 jobs after my dad left. I started waitressing at 16 to help support my younger brother. I practically raised him while Mom kept us afloat." Preston looked up, seeing her clearly for the first time all evening. "I never imagined I'd be in rooms like yours," Isabel continued. "Penthouses, galas, people whose yearly salary could pay off my student loans 10 times over. But I learned something waiting tables, raising my brother, watching my mom sacrifice everything. Love isn't about perfection. It's about showing up. It's about staying when things get hard." "Your mother sounds remarkable," Preston said quietly. "She was." Isabel's smile was sad. "She passed 2 years ago. Heart attack. Sudden like your wife." "I'm sorry." "Me too." She met his eyes. "But I learned that the people we love, they change us. They stay with us even after they're gone. Your daughter asking that question tonight? She's not forgetting her mother. She's just got a heart big enough to let other people in too." Preston felt something crack open in his chest. Not breaking, but opening. Like a door sealed shut for years finally admitting light. "Thank you," he said, the words inadequate for what he felt. "For tonight. For staying. For—" He gestured helplessly. Isabel set down her mug and moved toward the elevator. Preston followed, suddenly reluctant for the evening to end. At the elevator doors, she turned. Preston, you're doing your best. That's all anyone can do. And your best. It's pretty damn good. I don't know about that, he said softly. I do. She pressed the button. Harper's lucky to have you. The elevator chimed. The doors slid open. Isabel stepped inside, offering one last gentle smile as the doors began to close. Preston stood alone in the hallway, his reflection staring back from the polished metal doors. He looked tired, rumpled, different somehow. He looked like a man whose carefully constructed walls had just developed their first cracks. And standing there in the silent penthouse, with his daughter sleeping peacefully down the hall and the lingering warmth of unexpected connection in the air, Preston realized something that terrified and thrilled him in equal measure. He didn't want to repair those cracks. He wanted to see what might grow through them. Morning sunlight streamed through Harper's bedroom windows, painting her walls in shades of honey and gold. Preston was barely awake when small feet padded across his bedroom floor. "Daddy!" Harper climbed onto his bed, her elephant tucked under one arm. "When is Isabel coming back?" Preston's chest tightened. He'd known this question was coming. He just hadn't prepared an answer. "Sweetheart, Isabel was helping Daddy for one special night. She has her own life, her own work. But she said she cared about me." Harper's voice carried the particular logic of 6-year-olds that could dismantle adult reasoning in seconds. "Don't people who care about you come back?" Preston pulled her close, breathing in the strawberry scent of her shampoo. "It's complicated. Grown-ups always say that when they don't want to explain," Harper observed with devastating accuracy. She wasn't wrong. After dropping Harper at school, Preston sat in his office staring at his phone. The companion service had been clear about their policies. No contact information exchanged, no follow-up arrangements, complete discretion maintained. He'd agreed to those terms without hesitation. It had seemed reasonable, professional even. Now those same rules felt like prison bars. He called the service anyway. "I'm sorry, Mr. Walters," the polite voice on the other end said. "We cannot provide personal contact information for our companions. It's policy for everyone's protection and privacy." "I understand," Preston said, though he didn't. "Thank you." He set down the phone, feeling foolish. What had he expected? That he could simply decide he wanted Isabel Stanley in his life and circumvent every boundary he'd agreed to? The regret settled in his stomach like stone. 3 days later, his phone rang with an unfamiliar number. "Hello. Preston. It's Isabel." His heart jumped. "Isabel. How did you? You gave the service permission to share your contact information in case of follow-up," she said, a smile in her voice. "I took advantage of that clause. I hope that's okay. I wanted to check on Harper. See if she was feeling better after that night." Preston exhaled relief. He hadn't known he was holding. "She's been asking about you." A pause. "Has she?" "Constantly." Preston hesitated, then decided honesty was the only path forward. "I tried to call the service to get your number. They refused." "I'm glad they did," Isabel said softly. "This way I get to choose. And I'm choosing to call." "Why?" The question escaped before Preston could stop it. "Because I've been thinking about her too," Isabel admitted. "About both of you, actually. That night meant something to me. I don't want it to just end." Preston closed his eyes, something warm unfurling in his chest. "Would you like to see her again? No service, no arrangements. Just as friends." "I'd like that very much." The following Saturday, Isabel met them at the Natural History Museum. Harper spotted her first, breaking into a run that sent her light-up sneakers flashing. "Isabel." Isabel crouched to catch her, laughing as Harper threw small arms around her neck. "Hey you. I heard there are dinosaurs here. Think we can find them? The biggest ones." Harper grabbed her hand, already pulling her toward the entrance. Preston followed, watching how naturally Isabel bent to Harper's enthusiasm, how she asked questions that made his daughter think, how she never talked down but engaged completely. They spent 3 hours wandering through prehistoric exhibits and gem collections. Isabel lifted Harper to see the meteorites, explained constellations in the planetarium show, and sat cross-legged on the floor while Harper sketched her favorite fossils. Preston barely took photos. He didn't want to experience this through a screen. Weekends became a pattern. Isabel would come over, and they'd bake cookies that turned out lopsided but delicious. They'd draw elaborate fantasy maps of imaginary kingdoms. They'd read stories in voices that made Harper giggle until she hiccuped. Preston always stayed nearby, ostensibly reading or working, but really just watching. Watching Harper's joy return in waves he'd thought impossible. Watching Isabel navigate his daughter's world with intuitive grace. She never overstepped. Never tried to parent or discipline. She was simply present. Warm, steady, reliable. Everything Preston had forgotten could exist. One evening in early autumn, they sat on the penthouse terrace while Harper chased fireflies in the small garden area Preston had created for her. The city glowed beneath them, but Preston's attention was on the small figure darting between planters, her laughter rising like music. "I'm terrified," he said quietly. Isabel, sitting beside him on the outdoor sofa, turned. "Of what?" "This." Preston gestured between them toward Harper. "Letting you become important to her. To us. When Mia died, it didn't just break my heart. It shattered my ability to trust that good things can last. I've been protecting Harper by keeping everyone at a distance. But watching her with you." His voice caught. "She's happy. Really happy. And that terrifies me because I know how quickly happiness can be taken away." Isabel was quiet for a long moment, her gaze on Harper's glowing jar of captured fireflies. "Life doesn't come with guarantees, Preston. I can't promise I'll never hurt or disappoint you. I can't promise forever because none of us can." Preston's shoulders sagged. "But," Isabel continued, "I can promise that I'm not going anywhere by choice. What Harper needs isn't a replacement mother. She already has a mother. One who loved her and always will. What she needs is more love in her world. More people who show up. More proof that connection doesn't always mean loss." She turned to face him fully. "And I want to give her that. I want to give you that. If you'll let me." Preston looked at her. Really looked. At the sincerity in her brown eyes, the gentle strength in her posture, the way she'd woven herself into their lives without demanding anything in return. He'd locked a door 4 years ago, convinced that keeping it sealed was the only way to protect what remained of his heart. But sitting here, with this woman who'd arrived unexpectedly and stayed intentionally, Preston realized that protection and isolation were not the same thing. Slowly, carefully, he reached out and took her hand. Isabel's fingers closed around his, warm and certain. "Daddy." "Isabel. Look." Harper came running, her jar full of blinking lights. "I caught 7 whole fireflies." Isabel slid off the sofa and knelt to examine the jar, her face lighting with genuine wonder. "They're beautiful, Harper. Like tiny stars. Can we keep them?" Harper asked hopefully. "I think they'd be happier if we let them go," Isabel said gently. "But we can watch them together first." Preston stood back, watching them kneel side by side on the terrace, faces illuminated by captured light. Harper leaned against Isabel's shoulder naturally, comfortably, trusting. And Preston felt something inside him shift. Not breaking, but opening. Like a door he'd sealed for years finally admitting air and light and possibility. This wasn't the plan. He hadn't hired Isabel expecting anything beyond a single evening of professional companionship. He certainly hadn't expected her to become someone his daughter asked for, someone he looked forward to seeing, someone who made his carefully controlled world feel suddenly, terrifyingly alive. But watching them together, Harper's small hand on the jar, Isabel's larger one steadying it, Preston understood something profound. Love didn't arrive on schedule or follow reasonable plans. It showed up in navy dresses and work aprons. It stayed when it had every excuse to leave. It asked for nothing and offered everything. Harper opened the jar, and 7 fireflies rose into the darkening sky, their lights blinking like Morse code messages of hope. Isabel stood, slipping her hand back into Preston's as they watched the lights fade into the vast evening. "Thank you," Preston whispered. "For what?" "For opening the door I couldn't." Isabel squeezed his hand. "You opened it, Preston. I just walk through." Harper nestled between them, tired and content, and for the first time in 4 years, Preston allowed himself to imagine a future that wasn't defined by loss. A future where sticky love, the kind that stayed, might just be possible again. Thank you for watching today's story. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share with someone who loves powerful storytelling. Your support means everything. And before you go, drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. I love hearing from all of you. See you next time.